Hey, friend, welcome to Red Hot Mindset. I hope you know that you are uniquely you and God has gifted you with your own set of talents or skills that you can use to grow yourself and others to build his kingdom. Speaking of skills, do any of you love math? I was always good at math, but I never really loved it. I went all the way through calculus in high school, not really sure why, and I struggled through statistics in college, the one math course that I actually had to take there. Sometimes I just wondered what this all had to do with anything or how it could even apply to my everyday life. Learning is an important topic for intentional living. So today we are diving into math. I know it sounds random, but stick with me here. If we can help our kids learn to love math and understand how it is used in everyday life, I think we will set them up so well when they graduate high school. Help me with this. Today, I have my friend Erin Grieger back with us to share a few tips on how to incorporate math into our daily lives and how to make it fun and interesting for our kids. She is a math buff and a former high school math teacher who now teaches calculus tutorials on YouTube. Erin is a motherhood lifestyle blogger who focuses on a mom's journey with her health, home life, and homeschooling. If you want to learn a little bit more about her and her background, go back and listen to our first episode we did together on nutrition. I'll link it in the show notes for you, or you can easily find it by searching Red Hot Mindset and Erin Grieger. These Thursday tidbits are short and sweet episodes filled with tangible tips that you can implement immediately. My goal with these topics is that you can use them to fuel your growth as you focus on being intentional in every area of your life. So let's get into today's Thursday tidbits. Hey, Erin, welcome to Red Hot Mindset. Thanks for joining me again as we talk about a really fun topic today.
Well, fun for some people.
That's
You
so
might want to
true.
tell them what it is first.
I know. I'm like, it's actually not that fun for me, but it is. It's become fun as I learn. But because today's topic may seem strange to be on a mindset podcast, but I love learning. And that's one thing I want to talk about more on this podcast, finding a love for learning as adults or for our kids. Like, I think it's so important when we learn how to learn, we'll be more likely to love learning and want to continue it as a lifestyle. And I think that's really important for us to teach and instill in our kids as well. Learning isn't always just textbook, but there is some value in textbooks. And so today we're talking about math, which you would think is more textbook, but actually math is really an everyday skill. And it's something that you learn in everyday life. And that's why I wanted to bring Erin in today to talk about how math is incorporated into our everyday lives and why we should help our kids see that. Because I've struggled with math in the past too. I kind of thought, like, well, I learned it through high school. I went through calc, but what did it do for me? Like, I don't see it all playing out. But I think we just don't see it because we're not like trying to figure out what it's doing. And so, Erin, I know that you have a math background, so I'd love for you to just share your own story with math and why you fell in love with it.
Well, I'll start out with saying my mom was a high school math teacher before I was born, and my dad is an engineer, and both sides of my family are heavy in math and science. So growing up, I knew I loved math. I just thought it was a lot of fun. And I wanted to be a math teacher, just like my mom was. And then when I had kids, I wanted to be able to stay at home. And that's what I've done. But I loved teaching math. I just think the subject is fun. I didn't want to be an accountant or just sit in a room where I crunch numbers all day because I'm very much an extrovert and I love being around people. And I knew I wanted to teach people because I wanted to see how people responded once they got it, once the light bulb went off. And so I love teaching math. And then once our girls were born, I stayed at home. Then I began homeschooling. And now as they're getting older and getting to the higher levels, because I taught high school math. So that's the math that I'm really passionate about, that I really like. I just think it's fun. I know I'm a nerd, but it's okay. And as they're getting older, I'm getting excited to teach them these higher levels. And so I wanted to make sure, though, starting off younger, that they had a math base and curriculum that I could stand behind, that I liked as a math teacher.
Mm, yeah, that's so fun. I I remember in calc, the reason I wanted to take calc was because one of my friends did. And I was kind of like one of those people going, well, I might as well do it. But our calc teacher was so funny. His name was Mr. Barons, and he was about retiring. I think he retired like the year or two after I graduated. But we used to hide his chalk or his eraser from him because he really hated and so he would just get so mad. Or if his chalk broke, he'd go into the next classroom and he'd grab one of their chalks because he couldn't stand broken chalk. It was just, he was hilarious and just the funniest guy. So he made calc fun. And I drove, but I still, it was hard, but he made it just entertaining. And I think that's something that you do as well. And you do it really well because you are engaging and fun. And I think that when we make math engaging and fun, it is more fun to learn. What do you think that we have to gain as moms or women to actually, if we see that math is actually around us, and that we can apply a lot of what we have learned or what our kids are learning in our daily lives?
Well, I think the one of the biggest struggles is some adults have come out of school thinking, I'm not good at math, I can't do math. And now they're doing this new math that I don't know understand how to do. And so I think a lot of it revolves around the negativity of what you're telling your kids about math. And
Mm,
I think the very first thing is, if you can stop talking negative about it, that will be huge in and of itself. Now, granted, everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and I'm not saying that you can't say, "Oh, I'm better at English than I am at math, or I'm better at art than I am at math." Like, we're all born differently. We have those, but to talk negatively about it and say that, then our kids automatically think, "Well, then I don't have to be good at it if my mom's not, or if my dad's not." And that's not what we should be doing either. So I think it's important for us to take a mindset of, okay, it might not have been my favorite thing, and I might not feel strong in that area, but I want my child to feel strong in that area. So I want to talk positively about this, about maybe the interactions with the teacher and what and how they're teaching it nowadays that might be different. I think the best thing that a parent can do is learn how their kid is being taught if they want to be able to help at home. Because I think with this new math, they created this, by they I mean the schools created this thing where they're teaching a kid at home and then telling the kid, well, your parent isn't going to understand how to do this. And then the parent's like, why is your teacher telling you that I don't know how to do this, when they're thinking I don't know how to do this? But they're creating them to fight against each other instead of work with each other. That's one of the reasons I'm actually glad that we are homeschooling, because then I can see how the math is being taught, and it makes it actually a little easier to put it into everyday life,
mhm.
because I know what they're currently going through and what they're learning and what they're being exposed to.
Yeah, that's so true. When I first saw how they were learning math, because I'm thankful that I'm homeschooling as well. A lot of it comes with that too. It's like I wouldn't understand it. I would have to relearn it probably. But it was crazy to me thinking, how do they understand it that way? But I think you're right. I think it is important for us as parents to be willing to say, okay, well, I'm going to learn it so I can help them, or I'm going to learn it enough, understand it enough so I can teach them that it's actually not as complicated as it seems, and it actually is a good skill to learn. So, what is your first tip for us as we work to help our kids learn to love math and apply it?
Well, the first thing is going to be practical examples. And we do this so easy when they're young. When they're in preschool or even before preschool, it's so easy for us to teach them to count things or to point out shapes and talk about different things like that. But then I think parents feel like beyond that, they get lost. Like, well, what can I do now? So I'm going to just run through some practical examples for you. For example, we were playing a game the other night, and you get these cards with how much your pizza order was. And so then at the end of the game, you have to add up all of the amounts of your pizza. And so one of the things I was teaching my 8-year-old daughter was like, okay, well, let's take the 15 and the $5 and put them together to make 20. And then you have a 30 card. So what's 20 and 30? That's 50. And so basically, you're trying to put numbers together, the fives together to make an even 10 or whatever, to make it easier for them to add. And just teaching them little tricks like that with numbers and then putting them in stacks of 50 or stacks of 100 or stacks of 10, whatever it may be, I think is an easy way to help them see, an easy way to understand and manipulate the numbers when
Hmm.
they're trying to add large quantities. Some of the other big things is when they're younger, birthdays. Let's say you have family coming over for a birthday party. How many people are coming over? You have them count all the people who are coming over. Okay, so how many seats do we need? Now, can you set the table and get the right amount of plates and silverware and cups and all those kinds of things out? All of that, the kid's not thinking, I'm doing math, but you're teaching them not only making sure that they know their math, but you're teaching them how to set up for a life event. You're teaching them through doing. Grocery shopping is huge. Like when you look at different prices, it's easy to see maybe which one price is cheaper than the other, but what size bag are you getting?
Mm.
Right. So teaching them how much are you paying per ounce for something. Now, granted, that's maybe when they get a little bit older, but still teaching them to see those things, not only the price difference, but how big is the bag that you're getting and what are you paying per ounce, then that helps them figure out maybe which one is the better deal.
Mm.
Clothes or toys when you're finding a sale, helping them figure out an easy way to do 10%, right? Most things are, let's say, 20% off. So what's an easy way to find 10%, right? And then once you find 10%, well, then how do you get 20%? Well, then you double it. Okay, so then how much am I getting off this toy, right? So you're finding that. And then, okay, well, if I get $5 off the toy, how much are you paying now? So some of those things, just teaching them, because if they really want the toy, make them figure it out or walk them through how to figure it out so they can see, is this really a good deal?
Mm.
Allowance money. When they earn an allowance, if you have them put, 10% for the church and then, 20% for savings or whatever it is, have them figure out what those numbers are. If you pay them $10 for an allowance or whatever, however you do that with your children, then have them figure out what is 10% of $10? What is 20% of $10? And once I take all that away, what do I have left to spend? Because those are the things, especially with the money, that is going to be huge for them to know once they get their first job. Because whatever you teach them to do as a young kid and with their first job is what they will continue through adulthood. So, what are those kinds of things you want them to do, and teaching them how to figure that out? So, when the numbers aren't nice and easy, like $10 a week or whatever it may be, and they're getting a paycheck, that they can figure those things out. Another big thing is cooking.
Mm.
So if you're making a recipe and let's say you don't want as many, so you're going to cut the recipe in half, having them help you figure out then how much milk to put in or how many eggs to put in if you're going to cut it in half or if you're going to double the recipe. Eh, Doubling the recipe is another good way to deal with fractions for sure. Because if you have a half a cup of milk and you need to double it, they take the two halves and okay, how much is two halves? And they're like, oh, that's a whole. So even doing with the cooking, that's an easy way to get your kids to start being involved in using math. My kids now, anytime I need like a spice for anything, I'm like, all right, guys, here's the spice list. Go put it together in a container and get all the teaspoons and the half teaspoons out or whatever it may be, because then they're used to seeing the fractions too. And I think that helps too. Then once they're introduced to fractions, it's not so foreign. They've seen something that looks like that. And then anything that you can relate to math that's important to them would be key. Like even if it's strategy and playing a game, all those kinds of skills are math minded skills. So anytime you can take something that is interesting to them that they like and you can have relate math to it in some way, will be helpful.
Okay. So I think what you're saying, it's almost like it's just about being intentional. It's about being intentional. And honestly, for moms, it's probably about being patient. Like instead of rush, 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 how can I talk through this with them? How can I? Because sometimes I think I just got to do this myself. It'll be faster. I can get it done.
Yeah.
But instead of that, I could just step back for a second and go, how can I help them learn? What's something that they'll get out of this? And asking them good questions and starting to understand how to engage in a conversation with them. Does that sound kind of what you're looking at with those examples?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I'm the same way. Like there are many times where I'm like, I just want to get this done. And it's hard sometimes to step back and make make time for that. And I think that's a whole nother podcast talk about creating margin and having space for that. But no, I totally agree. Being intentional about what it is that you're doing and teaching them within life.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have to talk about that again. We'll have to get
Yeah.
you on and talk about the intentionality of that. So I think it's really neat to see how learning comes in everyday activities. I think we forget, okay, with how to help them understand money and budgeting and just bringing them to the grocery store and having them help you figure out what you're going to buy and how much it's going to cost and all those things are math. And it's actually
Mhm.
kind of fun for them, and they have no idea that they're learning most of the time, right? And when they get a little older, they probably start going, "Oh, that's what she's doing. She's trying to teach me something." At least homeschool kids do that.
Yeah.
But I think it's the best way to learn, in my opinion. I think that that everyday skill. So, what else do you have for us? What's your second thought for math?
The second is play games that involve math. And I think sometimes this is the hardest for some people to think of fun games because they don't want to do math themselves. But the biggest thing that was eye opening for me, because I was taught traditionally to be a math educator from college. So I was taught to kind of, I don't want to say teach the test, but you're going through the book, you're doing these lessons, you're giving these worksheets, you're following the system. And it was hard for me to get out of that mindset and make it more game based.
Hmm.
But I know that if you do, they will have more fun and it'll stick with them longer. So in the math program that we chose to get, there was a statement where the author said, playing a 20-minute math game is the same as doing a worksheet. Which would
Mm.
you rather do?
Game.
And that, yeah, that was mind blowing to me. I'm like, oh, we can play games instead of doing a worksheet. Like, so here's just a couple game examples that you could easily do at home. A twist on goldfish, instead of doing pairs, do numbers that add up to 10.
Mm.
Because as soon as your kid can start to recognize the relationship between numbers that add up to 10, things will go a lot better for them in math as they get later in their math and adding larger numbers. So doing goldfish, but having the partners add up to 10. And to start off, we have like a cheat sheet that my girls look at so they start to learn the partners that add up to 10. Another game that we love is called Corners. And you can download this app. We actually have the little cards for it, which you can get, but you can download an app for it. And it usually you do them in multiples of five. And I actually have a YouTube video on how to play this game because it's kind of complicated to explain, but all of my girls love this game. They actually ask to play it on the app. And what you do with these little cards is there's numbers on each side of the card, and you have to match up colors, and the numbers have to be multiples of five. And so then you end up creating this pattern with all of these cards laid out on the table or on the app, and you try to do it so you can create a corner, and that corner then gives you like double the points. It's like the super special thing when you get a corner. So but they love that game. War is a good game that you can play and now start to play with double cards. So you turn over two cards at a time. So then they have to decide which is bigger. Now all the times they don't have to add them in their mind. They can just look at the two cards and decide, well, both my cards are bigger than your cards, so I win. So sometimes it's not always about them adding it, but them using the strategy to figure out they're basically estimating and they don't realize that they're estimating, but
Hmm.
they're figuring that out. And then there's a games book from a math program called Right Start Math, and it has all kinds of games in it that we use. And they have addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, time. So there's games for like setting up numbers around the clock and figuring out different times, and for money. So we use those games a lot. So even if you're not homeschooling, you can get your hands on some games for your kids for math just to help them at home that you guys could play as a family and to help give your kids more confidence in that area.
Oh, I love those suggestions. I actually haven't heard of some of them. Or the war. My 6-year-old loves war, but having them do two so they either have to add it or estimate, I think that's an awesome extension because my older kids would play that, And we love games as a family. Actually, we used to every day at lunch play a game. And usually it's like a strategy game or something, but with math games or whatever. And now we kind of do it more at dinner because we don't have as much time in between with their gymnastics schedule and stuff. But I love that. I love playing games. The only game I don't play is Monopoly, which probably you could say is a math game. I don't know. Maybe it's a mom thing, but I hate Monopoly. It's like
It's too
brings the
long.
worst out. It's too long, brings the worst out in me. So every time we go, let's play a game, the boys go, how about Monopoly? Because they know I hate it. One
Yeah.
time, this is probably totally off topic, but I said, fine, I'll play with you, but I am not trading with anybody. I'm not going to do it. So, because I just hate it when someone gets a Monopoly, you lose. Like as soon as there's a hotel, it's over, right? And so somehow I got one of every property, so nobody could get a Monopoly. And I was like, this is the best game ever. Anyway, that's really off topic, but that shows how much I love Monopoly. But that's kind of a math game, right? Have you ever played Monopoly Deal? It's like a shortened
No.
version. It's a card game and it's really fun. I don't know if it's so much math, but you get money. So you get, you're still exchanging money and stuff, but that's kind of fun. So the games that you mentioned, I'll definitely link. Maybe I'll link that YouTube video for corners, so that it's easily accessible. But I think those are some really great examples and games to look at and play. So what is your last tip for us as we help our kids love math?
So my last tip is get a math program that uses manipulatives. I will tell you as a math teacher, so when we were in school, when we were doing our student teaching, I remember the teacher bringing to us a bunch of different textbooks, and we all had to evaluate which textbooks we liked and which ones we didn't. And the way that we figured it out is from being in the classroom, we knew that kids learn better when they had manipulatives, when they could put their hands on things and move things around and see how the numbers interacted or the shapes or whatever it may be. The problem is, it's so unrealistic when you go into a school. When you go into a school, they don't have the budget or the time to do all the manipulatives because it's hard to work with children one on one. Because a lot of times when you are doing the manipulatives, you do have to give instruction as you're doing it. So if you can get manipulatives for your kids for sure, or get a curriculum, especially if you're homeschooling, find something that has manipulatives, not something that's just plugging into systems or formulas, because then they're going to think, okay, I don't remember how to do that because I don't remember the formula. And that's not what you want your kid to learn. You want your kid to be able to think through the problem. So, for example, when my daughter was 8, we started teaching her fractions. But for like 2 years, she never even learned that the top is called the numerator and the bottom is called denominator. They didn't even go there.
Hmm.
All they did was give her a fraction chart, and she was able to add and subtract fractions and play. We had fraction war games that we played that had all the fraction numbers on it. She was able to play fraction war games and know which ones were bigger just because she used this manipulative of the fraction chart.
Hmm.
She didn't have to know that both denominators have to be the same before you can add the numerator and blah, blah. I mean, even as a math teacher, sometimes I'm like, what are all these rules again? So I think it's important that if you can teach a kid how to understand the concept before teaching them a bunch of rules,
Hmm.
it'll go a lot further in their understanding. So I highly recommend getting something that is manipulative based. And like I said, we currently use Right Start Math. And I absolutely love that program, hands down. As a math teacher, I recommend it to anyone who is going to homeschool because I see what it does for my kids. I see what they're teaching, the understanding of the math, and how numbers all work together. And I can't say enough good things about the program.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think I struggle a little bit with manipulatives, but I know that it's good for them. So I'm like, okay, I'll take the time and we will do it. So, and you can find manipulative blocks and different things just on Amazon, or, if you are schooling in a traditional school, maybe having the manipulatives for fun and doing some of that at home would be helpful. So
Yes.
yeah, yeah, this is good. Okay, so some of the tips that you've given us today for loving math, helping our kids love math. You gave us some practical examples of how to use it in everyday life and how to just encourage our kids in it and have these conversations with them. Um, the second tip was to play games that involve math. Games are fun. I mean, kids don't know they're learning when they're playing a game. And it's one of the best ways to get them involved and get them excited about something. And then number three, to use a math curriculum with manipulatives, or if you are currently in a public school, using manipulatives at home just to help engage that mind and help them to keep learning. Um, and see, we can make learning fun. I'm actually kind of excited to go try some of those math games with my kids. And, that comes from someone who's somewhat good at math, but doesn't really have a love for math. It's not like my first love or my first thing that I wake up in the morning to go, I just want to do some math problems. But I
Right.
think that just finding a love for learning and really understanding that math is one subject, but it's also integrated into all the other subjects of learning or into everyday life. So it's almost like it shouldn't just be a separate thing, it should be integrated into what we do. So I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that? I mean, you and I are both kind of classical teachers as well. So we kind of understand that, bring every subject together and.
Oh, I totally agree with you. Like you said, being classically trained and following that kind of homeschool curriculum, I found a ton of overlap in our language arts with our math. And it's very cool because actually I do like in this math curriculum, they will bring up when they are teaching them concepts that were done by somebody famous or something, they will put a little excerpt in there about who the person was and how this when this came to be. And I just find that to be very interesting that they can apply it then to other aspects of their life. And it's not just math is here, English is here, history is here, but how they can all be interrelated.
Yeah, yeah, that's so cool. So, well, this has been fun. I know that we talked about a lot of different things, so I'll make sure to link as many of the resources I can into the show notes. If you want to connect more with Erin, you can go to eringrieger.com. She has a lot of great articles on learning. So if you're like, even not just math related, but she has some math related articles. She has just homeschool in general, learning in general. So go take a look at that because she's a wealth of wisdom, especially when it comes to the homeschool realm. She's been doing it for a very long time. And I just appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us to help us try and love math a little bit more.
Of course. Well, thank you so much. Anytime I can turn somebody on the math, it's a win.